Nevada, 1962. A black shape waits on a runway that officially does not exist, in a desert that officially has no name. Its pilot has trained for months. He knows every switch, every gauge. What he does not know is who built the plane, or who it truly belongs to. This aircraft can outrun missiles, outclimb interceptors, and vanish above 90,000 feet. For years, the United States government will deny it exists. This is the story of the Lockheed A-12 Oxcart, the fastest, highest-flying spy plane the world was never supposed to see. It flew faster than a bullet. It flew higher than commercial jets fly today. And for over a decade, almost no one on Earth knew it was real. Even its own ground crews were told a cover story. Even its pilots, sworn to secrecy, could not tell their own families where they had been. Built from a metal the United States barely knew how to work with. Flown by men recruited in secret. Hidden in a valley that did not appear on any map. This is how the CIA built an aircraft so advanced, the Air Force itself did not learn the full truth for years. The story begins in the late 1950s, at the height of the Cold War, when the sky itself had become a battlefield. America's U-2 spy plane had been flying over the Soviet Union since 1956, photographing missile sites from 70,000 feet, believed untouchable. But Soviet radar was improving fast. American planners knew that one day, a surface-to-air missile would find its mark. The CIA needed a successor. Not a faster U-2, something entirely new. An aircraft so fast that no missile could catch it, and so high that no radar could easily track it. The agency turned to one man, Clarence Kelly Johnson, chief engineer of Lockheed's secretive Skunk Works division in Burbank, California. Johnson had already built the U-2. Now the CIA asked him for something almost impossible, a manned aircraft that could cruise at 3 times the speed of sound. Lockheed's design competed against a rival proposal from Convair, codenamed Kingfish. In 1959, the CIA made its choice. Lockheed's design won. The program was given a new, deliberately meaningless code name, one designed to hide it in plain sight, Project Oxcart. On January 26, 1960, the CIA gave the order, build 12 of these aircraft. None of them could look anything like a normal airplane. Every part of this jet would push technology further than anyone had gone before, the engines, the fuel, the materials, even the tools used to build it. The team gave the aircraft a name based on its shape, Archangel. As the design evolved through 12 versions, it simply became known internally as the A-12. To keep the program secret, Lockheed used shell companies to buy materials, and the CIA built an entire test base from scratch in the Nevada desert. That base would later become one of the most famous secret locations on Earth, Area 51. Finished aircraft parts were flown out of Burbank at night, disguised beneath false crates, then trucked the final miles under cover of darkness. Flying at 3 times the speed of sound generates enormous heat. Aluminum, the standard aircraft metal of the era, would simply melt. Kelly Johnson's solution was radical: build the aircraft almost entirely from titanium, a metal so difficult to machine that American industry barely understood it. In one of the Cold War's strangest ironies, much of that titanium was secretly purchased from the Soviet Union itself, through shell companies, without Moscow ever knowing its true use. The aircraft's sleek, wasp-like shape came from a new science, reducing its radar signature before the word stealth even existed. Its chined edges and canted vertical tails were shaped not just for speed, but to scatter radar waves away from the enemy sets trying to find it. Powering it all were 2 Pratt & Whitney J58 engines, capable of switching between turbojet and ramjet airflow mid-flight, a feat of engineering few believed possible. At full speed, the plane's skin could reach over 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Even the fuel was specially engineered so it would not ignite from the heat alone. The airframe itself would expand several inches in flight from the heat, then contract again on the ground, an aircraft that breathed like a living thing. Pilots wore pressurized suits nearly identical to those later used by astronauts, because above 80,000 feet, the human body cannot survive unprotected. By early 1962, the first completed A-12 was ready. It was trucked in pieces across the desert and reassembled inside a guarded hangar at Groom Lake. On April 26, 1962, test pilot Lou Schork took the aircraft up for what was meant to be a simple taxi test. Instead, the aircraft unexpectedly lifted off the runway, bounced briefly through the air, and touched back down, an unplanned first flight lasting only seconds. For days later, on April 30, 1962, the A-12 flew its first official flight, climbing cleanly into the Nevada sky. Within days, the aircraft broke the sound barrier for the first time, reaching Mach 1 at 40,000 feet. Early testing was fraught with danger. Fuel leaks, engine surges, and violent air intake instability plagued the untested J-58 engines. Test pilots described flying the A-12 as wrestling a wild animal that wanted to tear itself apart at high speed. Slowly, engineers tamed the aircraft's temperament. By 1963, testing expanded to Edwards Air Force Base in California, where the program could push further. Finally, the aircraft reached its design goal of Mach 3.2, at over 90,000 feet, faster and higher than any operational aircraft before it. But speed came with cost. Over the course of the program, several aircraft were lost to accidents during testing, and 2 pilots did not survive. By 1965, the aircraft was finally ready for its true purpose, not testing, but espionage. In May 1967, under the code name Operation Black Shield, A-12s deployed for the first time to Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, Japan. From there, the aircraft flew missions no one back home would ever read about, high above North Vietnam, photographing surface-to-air missile sites at speeds no gunner could track. A single pass captured more usable intelligence than weeks of ground reconnaissance, images so sharp, analysts could count individual missile launchers from 90,000 feet. In January 1968, when North Korea seized the American spy ship USS Pueblo, Washington turned to the A-12 for answers. Flying from Okinawa, an A-12 pilot swept over the Korean coastline in minutes, gathering the imagery that ground commanders desperately needed. For over a year, the A-12 flew undetected over hostile territory. No enemy fighter ever came close. No missile ever found its mark. But the program's greatest threat was never the enemy. It was its own successor, quietly waiting in the wings. The Air Force's own version, the 2-seat State Route 71 Blackbird, offered more range and a second crewman for defensive systems. Momentum in Washington began shifting toward it. On June 5, 1968, tragedy struck. CIA pilot Jack Weeks took off from Kadena on a routine functional check flight after an engine change. Minutes into the flight, telemetry showed a catastrophic engine failure. The aircraft was lost over the South China Sea. Weeks did not survive. It was the second and final loss of a CIA pilot in the Oxcart program, a quiet tragedy the public would not learn of for decades. Within weeks, Washington made its decision. The A-12 fleet would be retired, its mission handed fully to the Air Force's State Route 71. On June 21, 1968, the last A-12 lifted off from Groom Lake and flew to Palmdale, California, where the surviving fleet was quietly put into storage. 9 of the surviving aircraft were parked wingtip to wingtip inside a single hangar, where they would sit in silence for more than 20 years. For years, the very existence of the A-12 remained one of America's most closely guarded secrets. It was not declassified until 2007, nearly 40 years after it stopped flying. Every major stealth and high-speed aircraft that followed, the State Route 71, the F-117, even the modern drones flying today, owe something to what Kelly Johnson's team proved here. It proved that titanium airframes were possible. It proved that engines could breathe differently at different speeds. It proved that radar could be defeated by shape alone. 13 A-12s were built. 4 were lost in accidents. The rest now rest in museums across the United States, still holding their secrets in cold titanium skin. Today, satellites do much of the work the A-12 once did, and modern drones patrol contested skies without risking a human life. Yet even now, no operational aircraft has matched the A-12's sustained speed of Mach 3.2 at 90,000 feet. In more than 60 years, nothing man has done it again. The A-12 was never about brute force. It was about disappearing, flying so fast and so high that the rules of war simply did not apply to it. Was the A-12 a success? Militarily, it flew flawlessly through hostile skies for over a year without a single aircraft lost to enemy action. Politically, it was overshadowed almost immediately by its own descendant, the State Route 71, remembered today as a footnote to a jet it helped create. But without the A-12, there is no State Route 71. Without Oxcart's hard-won lessons, the age of stealth and hypersonic flight begins years later than it did. The men who flew it are mostly gone now. The base that built it has grown into legend for entirely different reasons. But for one brief decade, a black titanium jet outran every threat the world could throw at it, flying missions history almost forgot to record. The Lockheed 12 Oxcart, the jet so secret, even the men who flew it never knew the whole truth of what they carried in.